everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to get started shortly. We just want to make sure everyone has a chance to log into the webinar and they wanted to join today. So in the meantime, let us know where you're joining us from today in the comments on either LinkedIn or YouTube Live. City and state is enough. We just like to know where you are in the world as you're joining us today. All right, let's roll. Thank you again for your patience as we got started, and welcome to From Zoomers to Boomers, Tips for Thriving in a Multi-Generational Workplace, brought to you by Indeed's Job Search Academy. My name's Matt Berndt, and I am a longtime career strategist and the head of Indeed's Job Search Academy, and I am pleased to be serving as your host and facilitator today. Helping me in the background will be my colleague, Bridget Power, who is serving as our producer. Now, you won't see her, but know she is working hard, keeping our webinar running smoothly. Now, joining me soon on stage will be an amazing panel, including Summer Salazar, Gorick, Ange Richard. Our fourth scheduled panelist, Ray Angle, had a last-minute unavoidable conflict that prevented him from being with us today. Ray, we totally understand, but we miss you. Okay, our roundtable discussion will center on how you can thrive in a multi-generational workplace, regardless of whether you are a Zoomer or a Boomer, a Millennial or a Gen Xer, or you're like me, you're a cusper falling in between two of the generations. Our panel will also be fielding your questions. Now, while we will welcome any questions related to job search, we really want to give preference to those questions on workplace performance, career advancement, and professional development in a multi-generational workplace. So feel free to start adding your questions in the chat at any time, whether you're on LinkedIn or whether you are on YouTube. Now, we have two colleagues, Mark Stevens-Vaught and Krishali Parmar, monitoring our comments, your comments, and they'll be answering some of your questions and saving others for the panel to address, and sharing links to relevant documents and resources. Mark is on LinkedIn, Krishali is on YouTube, and we are simulcasting today's webinar across both platforms. To help you get the most out of the webinar, we've created a worksheet you can download and use to take notes during the webinar. You can see the QR code is on the screen, and they're scrolling what is it? It's a URL. That's right. They're dropping that into the chat if that's easier for you. This worksheet contains a list of helpful resources from Indeed to assist you in your job search and to help you navigate our wide variety of job search and career development products and services. It also includes some great resources from Summer, Gorick, and Ange. We want you to tap into those. We'll be sharing some of those during the webinar too. You can use that QR code to download the handout or the link. Now we want to run into a little bit of housekeeping. Don't worry, we're getting to our topic. As I mentioned, we want you to submit your questions in the comments. When you do, try and keep them brief. Questions with a lot of context are hard to get on screen, so try and keep your questions brief and to our topic. Please know also our conversation's really addressed on the U.S. market and this topic in the U.S. There are a lot of different customs and trends in other countries. This is a U.S.-focused conversation. Now, the links that are going to be shared with you throughout may be challenging just to click on LinkedIn, so you may need to copy them and paste them out of LinkedIn. It's a quirk of comments on LinkedIn that you can't always necessarily just click on stuff and get to. You may need to pull them out. We ask that you be respectful of all of our panelists and, of course, of your fellow attendees. There's often a lot of chatter across LinkedIn between folks. Just be respectful of each other because we're all here to learn and have a good time. And then finally, please don't share any personally identifiable information beyond your name and your city and your state, because we asked for that earlier. But no resumes, no ID cards, no passports, none of that personally identifiable stuff that you should be sharing only one-on-one with someone that you trust, okay? Don't share it here. We always get the question, hey, is this being recorded? And we get it multiple times during webinars. And of course, the answer is yes. It is being recorded, and the recording will be available immediately following the conclusion of the webinar on LinkedIn at the exact same URL you used to join. It'll also be available within the next 2 weeks and will be hosted on our Job Search Academy workshops page, along with the recordings of all of the other workshops and webinars that we have done. So if you drop off, jump back on. If you have to leave and you want to look at this later, jump back onto the LinkedIn link a little bit later, and you can catch everything. Finally, it's important that we make 2 disclaimers about today's webinar. First, the following webinar is for informational purposes only, and any information and advice that we provide during the webinar should not be taken as personalized individual counsel. And second, the advice and the opinions that are being expressed by myself and our panelists today are our own, and they do not necessarily reflect the views of Indeed. All of that done, let's get on with it, and let's welcome our guests today. First up, we have Summer Salazar. Full disclosure, Summer's an old friend, but she's also modernizing how individuals and organizations approach etiquette and workplace readiness. She's 20 years of experience in higher education and working with national nonprofits, and she's partnered with organizations of all sizes, from startups to global giants. And over the past decade, she's trained thousands of professionals across industries. She's known for her inclusive and engaging approach. Summer helps all generations feel confident and comfortable at the table, equipping them with the skills to navigate today's evolving workplace with self-awareness and leadership presence. Summer, welcome to today's panel. It's always good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
It's going to be good fun. Okay, also joining us today is Ange Richard. She's a top LinkedIn voice and founder of Professionally Unprofessional. What a great name. And she's a career coach at Boston University. Ange bridges generational gaps in the workplace as a sought-after Gen Z career coach. She's currently pursuing her PhD at Boston College, and she combines academic insight with practical lived experience to guide early career professionals through the complexities of today's intergenerational workplace. She's based in Boston and is an avid ClassPass user, and she enjoys a long walk on a sunny day. Ange, we have that in common. Welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt. I'm super excited to be here today.
Wonderful. You're seeing that our friends are sharing Ange's and Summer's and soon to be Gorick's links so that you can connect with them more directly and see their resources. And finally, we have Gorick Ng. Gorick is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, a career advisor at Harvard, and a faculty member at UC Berkeley, where he teaches a course based on his book, The Unspoken Rules: Secrets to Starting Your Career Off Right. He's a proud first-gen college grad turned investment banker turned management consultant. Gorick is a regular Fortune 500 keynote speaker and has been featured in the New York Times, Financial Times, CNBC, and more. He's also published a free weekly career strategies newsletter that we'll share a link to in the chat. Gorick also is the best background. As we were getting ready to start this, we were commenting on each other's background, and we were admiring his setup.
Hello, Matt. Thanks so much for having me. It's amazing to be here.
You know, it's great. I thank you all for being here today and being willing to share your advice and your insights with our audience. Now, if you're interested in connecting with our panelists, Mark is dropping and sharing their information in on how you can get comments. And again, their information is in the handout that we shared. Let's get started. But we're talking really about how to be successful in the workplace etiquette, business etiquette. But what exactly is that? Back when I was a career center director, my team used to host etiquette dinners, and the topic of etiquette in career services largely boiled down to how to conduct yourself in social business situations like dinners and receptions. But etiquette is actually a much broader and important topic than just making sure you use the right fork or the right spoon at dinner. Summer, this is squarely in your world. Can you kick us off by putting business etiquette into a contemporary context?
Sure. Thank you, Matt. It's definitely more than the fork. So I also serve as an associate trainer for the Etiquette Institute. where Ray Ingalls serves as the president. And the way we define etiquette is as a combination of behaviors involving manners, hospitality, grace, and professionalism designed to create a welcoming and inclusive, keyword inclusive, environment that fosters a spirit of belonging in any personal, which would be social, or workplace, which would be your professional setting. So there's two settings we really look at when we think about personal or professional. Today, I think we're focusing more on the professional setting, and we use a framework of the 4 C's that includes context, culture, change, and comfort. And you would interchangeably use those 4 C's in any situation. So that's how we define it. At the end of the day, etiquette is for everyone to make everybody feel comfortable and create that inclusive environment.
Hey, Summer, thanks for sharing that. It's important that you make that distinction between personal and work, or social and professional, those kinds of things. Those worlds blend together so frequently in the lives of all of us, but particularly our younger professionals, that understanding there's a gray area there is really, really important. Now I'm not a Gen Zer. I'm that cusper that's a Gen X boomer cusper. And so I'm in the position where I can say, if I knew then what I know now, I can tell those stories. But it's important to think about it that way. If you knew then what you know now, how do you set yourself up for success? Let's dive into that. Starting a new job is both exciting and frankly a little bit scary. You're meeting new people, learning a new role, how to work with new peers, how to work for a new boss, understanding and navigating workplace dynamics and workplace politics, and ultimately trying to make a good first impression and set yourself up for success. Now, we've all had multiple jobs, and we all coach students entering the workforce for the first time and professionals making job and career transitions. Gorick, I want to come to you first on this. What advice do you have for new professionals entering the workplace, perhaps for the first time, to set themselves up for success?
The biggest thing to keep in mind is it's a completely different set of expectations from what you might be used to in school. I still remember when I was out in my first job, I thought, okay, I got good grades in school. I worked hard. This is all that there is to it, right? I got good grades. I'm clearly going to get good grades here in the workplace as well, until I realized that my manager would tell me that I'm doing a good job or not give me any feedback, but I would otherwise just feel like I'm just cruising along. And then my performance evaluation came out and it said, I need to be more proactive. I need to take more ownership. I need to manage up more. I need to be more of a team player, whatever that meant. And all of this came as this big, rude, sudden awakening 12 months into my job. And I felt like, wow, wait, why didn't anyone tell me any of these things? And so I ended up interviewing over 500 professionals across geographies, industries, and job types for the unspoken rules. And I realized when I took a step back that there's this hidden rubric of the workplace, and it's called the 3 C's, not 4, but 3. And they stand for competence, commitment, and compatibility. And the idea is this: the minute you show up, whether it's in a cover letter, a coffee chat, a one-on-one, a client meeting, it's the instant that your colleagues and coworkers and partners will be sizing you up and asking themselves 3 questions. The first question is, can you do this job well? Which is the question of, are you competent? The second question is, are you excited to be here and to grow here? And that's the question of, are you committed? And then finally, there's the question of, do we get along? Or in other words, are we compatible? The 3 C's. Your job, and frankly, all of our jobs, and this includes the CEO of your company, it's to demonstrate that, yes, you are in fact competent, committed, and compatible all the time. Demonstrate these 3 C's and you'll build trust, unlock opportunity, and you'll set yourself up for a fulfilling and successful career. But no one tells you these things. So hopefully you're hearing this for the first time here and finding it useful.
I love this, Gorick. It ties really closely into the workshop that we do on interviewing skills and what employers really want to know in an interview, which is why you're a good candidate, why you're a good fit, why you want to work for them, your excitement, and why you want to work in their world. They're understanding why you want to be in that place. And these 3 C's are great, and they really carry out in it. There's another C, though, Summer, I think. It's consistency, right?
Yes, absolutely. And Gorick said it. He said all the time. So first impressions matter. Knowing the 3 C's is very important. but making sure that you're consistent with those actions, with your words, with your deeds every single day, because it's not just important what you do on day one, but how you show up on day 30 and day 60 and day 90. So making sure that you are, when you're setting goals and you're making promises that you're going to contribute to a team, that you're living up to that. So I love the 3 C's and then adding that consistency on a daily basis.
Excellent. All right, let's move on to our next topic. We've all been in that situation where we're at work and we see someone who does something and you go, oh, I wouldn't recommend that. How do we recognize and avoid these career limiting actions and decisions? Now, I'm assuming everyone's heard of career limiting actions or decisions, but these are the kind of actions that we've seen people take or decisions that people have made that could negatively impact their ability to advance in their role with their company. Some of the more obvious examples include things like inappropriate behavior at a work party or an event, or just being rude or disrespectful to colleagues. But there are a lot more subtle things that people can do that could be career limiting. Ange, I want to come to you first as we move into this topic. What are some of the career limiting actions that you've seen and how can people avoid them?
Absolutely. Even in my early career, I've definitely encountered some opportunities where if I didn't act a certain way or didn't seek support, I could have made a career limiting decision. When I think about this, I'm a maximizer. That's one of my strengths. And so I think about those things that, while maybe not career damaging, could be limiting if we choose not to act on them or simply do not know how to act on them. So, an example of that might be showing up as your best self at, let's say, a networking event or an opportunity to connect with employers or recruiters if you're looking for a job. If you're not prepared with copies of your resume, some background research on that organization or that recruiter, or just a general openness to meeting new people and seeing what opportunities are available, that could become career limiting. I also think about showing up to a performance review without evidence of your work in tow, having not documented everything that you've accomplished over that performance period. That could be career limiting. And so, in these situations, especially as an early career professional, I always seek the counsel of mentors, particularly those who are in similar positions as me and who might have some years of experience under their belt and can kind of shape what I might choose to do or give me some guidance on what that could look like. I also try to always present myself as an asset and with value in everything that I do. That way, I'm not limiting my perception or how I can show up for others that I'm serving.
It's an important thing that you bring up there. Sometimes these career limiting decisions or actions or inactions happen when opportunity is presented. I've seen this happen with younger professionals who have been identified as maybe being a potential real high performer that get invited into projects that go beyond the scope of their job, but are giving them access that they otherwise wouldn't have, and would say, no, I really don't think that I want to do that. That's in effect when the door is being opened for you by your boss or even maybe someone on another team to develop further, maybe push yourself. That's a career building opportunity. And saying no to something like that could be career limiting because they might not ask you again. So these can be some great opportunities to grow. Summer, you've worked in a variety of workplaces and work settings. What have you seen? What are career limiting actions or decisions that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Ange. When you think about it, some of these actions aren't as obvious as people think, but I think you also have an opportunity to raise your hand. Like you said, sometimes we work and we think that people are going to recognize our efforts without asking, giving them examples or bringing our work to people's attention. So making sure that you raise your hand for extra projects, right? There's this saying that it's not what you know, it's who you know, but it's also about who knows you. And this is all your reputation. So as Matt, you mentioned, as projects are coming about and they're looking for new people to lead them and adding you to the team, they're going to have those conversations. They're going to pause and think, what has this person been doing on a consistent basis? Do they get their projects in on time? Are they at work on time? Do they understand the unspoken rules of just communicating and being friendly with individuals? And all of that matters when they're looking to find somebody new or somebody to either lead or contribute to a project.
Cool. Gorick, I don't want to leave you out. I imagine you've got a little advice that you'd share here too. Anything that you want to chime in on this topic of career limiting actions or decisions and how to avoid them?
Well, I'd say that Summer and Ange brought up a ton. I'd say that if you haven't noticed by now, so many of these hidden expectations won't ever be articulated to you. Instead, your manager and coworkers will be in the room next door whispering about it behind your back, and eventually it may show up or not in your performance evaluation. And many people, unfortunately, don't even get a chance to bump their heads up against that so-called glass ceiling because they were overlooked for that promotion, or they were slotted into another assignment or another project that may not be that career building opportunity. So it's important to look left, look right, and ask yourself, what are the behaviors that are rewarded in this organization? And to emulate the ones that feel authentic and natural to you.
You know, it's really important as you say that to find an organization that fits you, because you want to emulate the values of an organization that you want to be a part of. So when you're interviewing with companies and looking at companies to join, look to see whether the work environment and culture that they offer is one where you can thrive. And then, Gorick, as you said, lean into it and ask. You know, the worst thing that can happen if you ask to be involved in a project is they're going to say no on that project. But you're establishing yourself as someone who is assertive and is trying to engage with the organization.
I
Great
love
advice.
that. If I could just add, I mean,
Please.
especially for those, and I work primarily and a great deal with early career professionals. There's a great deal of bias towards this new generation of talent that's coming into the workforce. You're lazy. You're always on your phone. You don't care. You have to be told what to do. You're not proactive. You're not willing to go above and beyond. And so frankly, I mean, the bar has never been lower. And for those of you who are tuning in, I assume you're different because you want to get ahead. You do want to take ownership of your career and future. You're already doing this quiet work. You have to show it though, because someone might be looking at you and thinking, I think I know a lot about you without actually knowing you, and they're just going to be off. So disarm them with your proactivity, disarm them with your commitment.
You know, we've done a lot of research, and I've done a lot of research myself here at Indeed on Generation Z and generations in the workplace. And when I get that question, when I'm talking at conferences, I often say, no, I don't believe that Generation Z is lazy. They define work differently than I do or than we do, people from my generation. They came into the world of work when the world of work was in remote hybrid flux caused by COVID, where all the rules of what used to define what work were thrown up into the air, and we had to recreate what was going on. And they've done that. And they're the first generation. Y'all are the first generation to really embrace work on your terms. There's the trade-offs that go along with that. But that's something, whenever someone says, oh, they're a lazy generation, I'm saying, no, they just work a heck of a lot differently than we do. And they're defining work differently than we do. Some of that comes down to communication and workplace languages. And this is a great example of trying to communicate across generations. But sometimes in many organizations, you have to communicate across cultures. Indeed is the most international organization I have ever worked with. We're in 60 different countries, and we provide resources in 28 different languages. Not surprisingly, our workforce is really, really diverse. When I worked in the office in Austin, it was not at all unusual to walk through our lunchroom area and hear 6 or 7 different languages being spoken simultaneously because of the team that was there. I have many coworkers whose first language is not English. In fact, on one of my former teams, my primary colleagues sat in Dusseldorf, Singapore, Bangalore, London, and me in Austin. So it was always a challenge finding a good time for a conference call. Whether they're formed by our cultural background, the languages we speak, or the generations we most identify with, we all have different workplace languages, and we all navigate communicating across generations and cultures. And this can be really, really tough, but it doesn't have to be. Gorick, I'm going to start with you on this one. What are some of those challenges that you have seen? You just started to mention. And what advice do you have for learning and developing your fluency across workplace languages?
You mentioned languages. Well, when it comes to languages, there's what's spoken and there's what's unspoken. So when it comes to what's spoken, corporate America has a certain way of jargonizing everything up. And there's a certain style of communication as well that's objective and passive voice. So you'll hear things like revenues are declining rather than, oh my goodness, we're losing money. And so being able to communicate in this more subtle way can mean the difference between you being seen as an insider and you being seen as an outsider. I was frankly overwhelmed when I was first starting out. And so I started jotting down all of these unfamiliar terms and ended up creating a workplace jargon dictionary of nearly 1,000 terms, which we'll share out in the comments section for you to check out. If you find yourself thinking, wait, I'm not in a restaurant. Why is everybody saying that there are too many cooks in the kitchen? A lot of these euphemisms in corporate America, and it's important to know how these insiders communicate so you at least follow the discussion and maybe even use some of them, not to sound like a robot, but to at least know what words to use when. And then when it comes to what's unspoken, well, different cultures will have different levels of directness and indirectness. So if you work with someone who is from a more direct country, you might see them as rude, as insensitive, as maybe even aggressive. And that person might see someone who comes from a more indirect culture as passive, as not being specific, as not being precise. And so it's important to look at language as this fluid dimension of direct to indirect. I just remember still my manager would say, oh, this is okay. And to me, I thought, so it's okay, right? And I could see just from the facial expressions of our other panelists and Matt, it's probably not okay.
I heard that inflection in your voice. It's okay.
It's okay. And so you have to really read between the lines. And when in doubt, take Angie's advice of find someone you trust in this organization who can whisper in your ear and tell you how things really work and how to best work with him.
You know, it's really important, I think, also to have the humility to ask. If you're not familiar with the acronym, just simply say, I'm not familiar with that acronym. Could you share it with me? I just think about Indeed alone, and there are so many acronyms flying around. We have our own internal dictionaries of all of these, and we're still somewhat confused. It's always okay to ask so that you can become informed. You might find an ally that way as well. And then I just like to be really curious, particularly when it comes to my international colleagues, to understand the world from their perspective and not fall into the habit of requesting that everyone adapt to the world that you understand and you know. There's all kinds of give and take in there. And you mentioned it earlier, and Gorick sort of transitioned to this. You talked about the notion of finding a mentor and how this can be helpful. Can you dive into that a little bit more?
I will sing the praises of mentorship as long and as often as I can. It has truly been the most pivotal aspect of my growing and developing understanding of what it means to be a professional in the world of work and how I show up and how I want to develop my personal brand and my reputation. So, any opportunities that are available to you to take advantage of, I think, particularly intergenerational mentoring, are ones that I would take advantage of wholeheartedly. Whether that's through a program developed and managed by your employer, maybe that's through an employee resource group or some other kind of mentorship, whether that's through a professional association, so something a bit more industry focused. Not only will those opportunities help kind of catalyze and grow your career, but to Gorick's point about understanding some of those unspoken rules, especially if they are at work, you can better understand what are the communication norms here. How do I dive into a conversation appropriately? How historically have folks enjoyed collaborating? And then it also gives you a chance to reflect, how can I jump in? How can what I do be an asset here? How can the skills that I bring be a really big benefit to the team that I'm working on? Just being open to having those conversations and breaking down those communication differences and seeing them as a true benefit and asset and not as a detriment to something that's been done before is also very, very important. It's a mindset and an action.
Oh, that's wonderful. Hey, friends who are joining us, we're getting ready to come into our hot takes, and then we're going to go into Q&A. So if you have additional questions that you want to ask, get them in the queue because we're moving into that part of the program. We've been having a great conversation for almost coming up on a half an hour, and we want to move into questions. But before we do, I want to give each one of our panelists the opportunity to share their single most important piece of workplace etiquette and advice. So that's my final question. I want your hot take. What is that single most important piece of workplace etiquette or workplace success advice that you can offer that people can act on right away? Summer, I want to start with you if I can.
Oh, I have so many thoughts about this, Matt. It's hard to bring it down to one, but really, I think it comes down to self-awareness. It's key in the workplace, really paying attention to the nuances of the space that you walk into, being able to navigate any space that you enter, and you can just pay attention to the signs, what's happening around the space. The example I use for this is I have a 7-year-old son, and when we were, trying to reintegrate him into, civilization and COVID, when we could take him to restaurants, one of the first restaurants we took him to, he was yelling and screaming. And I said, do you see anybody yelling and screaming in the restaurant? We don't yell and scream in public. And then, I took him to a Texas women's basketball game. Well, what was everybody doing in public, right? So really navigating every space that you're in, being very self-aware. The more self-aware that we are, it communicates that we understand that we're able to work with clients, we're able to work with colleagues. So again, it's really how do you navigate the space that you walk into? And the more work that we do on being self-aware, the better prepared we are for really any role.
Yeah, I almost look at that as developing a sense of confident humility. You want to be humble coming into almost any situation, but you want to go into it confident, and you have to develop that knowledge and that nuance, that humble confidence.
And
Gorick,
Matt, one other thing I will say,
please.
oh, sorry. I think about this like you're playing Uno. If everybody thinks they understand the rules of Uno, but it's house rules. So if you're at my house, you're probably going to lose. It's going to be a very intimidating game. But if I go to your house, you may play by different rules. And if I'm not sure, I'm going to ask. So what does that look like?
I just learned I'm not playing cards with you, Summer, because I don't know what about the house rules going. I'm going to keep my eye on that one. I'm not playing cards. All right, Gorick, what's your hot take?
Matt, what you said about confident humility really speaks to me. And it reminded me of this delicate balance between, well, in the 3 C's format, showing your competence, but not overshooting the mark and coming across as a know-it-all, but also not undershooting the mark and coming across as if you don't know what's going on. It's also about expressing your commitment, not so much that you're threatening to others, and also not under-expressing to the point where you look like you're apathetic. And so I'm now flashing back to my first job and frankly, every job that I've ever had. And also the conversations that I now have with leadership, where when I go to a company to speak, I often have a chance to interview their executives. And I ask them, what is the biggest characteristic that is most important to you, but that is most lacking in your workforce? And I'd say 10 out of 10 people will say the same thing, which is an ownership mindset. Earlier, I mentioned how I had this rude awakening from my performance evaluations that said I need to be more proactive. I needed to put myself out there more. I need to be more communicative. Well, what I realized is even though my manager has the title of, manager, they're just overseeing my work. There's this unspoken rule that it's actually my job to manage my manager, not the other way around. And so I flash back to my early projects where when my manager would come up to me and ask me to do work, I'd say, and I would smile and nod. And that was a syndrome of sorts of smile and nod and assume that whatever my manager had to say to me was perfectly thought out. And if I were to be confused, that it would be up to me to figure it out and just hide away and materialize only right before the deadline. I didn't realize that my higher performing coworkers who got ahead were managing the process. They were saying, okay, this sounds good. I have this information, but I don't have this information. You mentioned this name. It's unfamiliar to me. Might you be able to make an introduction? Okay, that sounds good. I'm looking at our calendars and it looks like you'll be out of the office this Friday. Would it make sense for us to check in this Thursday? And before I check in with you on this Thursday, I'm going to go chat with Ange, get her input, and then chat with Summer and get her perspective. I'll put a draft together and I'll send you some bullet points. Let's say this afternoon. Would that work for you? Now, I'm making this dialogue up, but what are you doing? You're managing your manager versus waiting for them to manage you. You're not being pushy. You're being confident, to use your language, Matt, but you're also asking, am I missing anything? Is there anything that I've overlooked? And you're being humble as well, also to use your language, Matt.
I love the notion, no matter how big or small your job is, you can own it. And when you own it, you're the caretaker of it, and it's your job to make sure that it thrives. I love that concept of an ownership mindset. Ange, what you got for us for a hot take?
My hot take, Matt, through the work that I do with Professionally Unprofessional and that I'm telling many young people that I work with, it's to build your leadership capacity from the start. Make sure you are standing out for opportunities to be called on. Make sure those managers that Gorick is referencing can call on you. Make sure you're an asset and that you're valuable. And then once you're in that position to lead, once you get that manager title, or when you are working with people, make sure you lead with a power with mindset and not a power over mindset.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. We can't get out of this without my own little hot take. And my hot take, I will just describe as try to curate within yourself always a respectful curiosity. We know the more I know, the more I realize I don't know all that much about the rest of the world and other people. When I meet a new person, I love to just begin a conversation with, tell me your story, so I can get to know them and where they're coming from. If you're working with colleagues from different parts of the country or different parts of the world, try and understand very respectfully where they're coming from. What skills do they bring to the table? If your superpower is unlocking other people's superpower within an organization, you're immediately valuable. And you learn all kinds of wonderful things about people and about the world and about the world of work and the opportunities that come to you if you are always curious, but you are respectfully curious in trying to understand, not trying to overcome or conquer. That's my tip, is respectful curiosity. So I want to recap it for everybody. We've got from Summer is to develop your self-awareness. From Gorick is develop that ownership mindset within your work. From Ange, build your leadership capacity and do it early. From me, nurture respectful curiosity. And then I think sort of collectively from all of us, practice confident humility as you step into a new workplace, step into a new role, step into almost any new situation. And you'll set yourself up to be successful. Gosh, I almost don't want to stop this conversation, but that wouldn't be fair to all of the wonderful people who have joined us. So what we want to do now is invite you to join us with your questions. And that means Bridget's going to be driving what we're doing, and she is going to bring up some questions for us. So Bridget, what is the first question for our gang here? From Kennedy, this makes me wonder how leadership can prep managers on how to prepare their recently graduated new employees for these invisible expectations. Or how do we reach more students at colleges and universities? Great questions, because we all of us have experience on both of those sides. Who wants to jump in first on this notion of preparing managers to make onboarding more, including those invisible expectations, and or what can we do at colleges and universities to prepare people better? Ange, please.
I'm happy to jump in on more of the logistics side of how to reach colleges and universities. I'd recommend leveraging NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, to help bridge some of those connection gaps that we often see between an employer and what career services is doing to prep their students at university for the world of work. So leveraging NACE, leveraging a regional association of colleges and employers all around the country, those are great ways for more local, maybe less intimidating opportunities to build those relationships and have a better conversation about, here's what our students are learning and here's how we're helping them build these skills for your opportunity. And here's how you can communicate with students about what you need and how they can contribute. So that's just kind of the logistics piece.
you know, at their various conferences, NACE and the regional ACEs always have sessions on workplace assimilation, onboarding, workplace etiquette, trying to train up career services professionals on that. And on some campuses, faculty are actually trying to incorporate this into their coursework. Folks like Gorick, folks like a friend of mine at the University of Texas, John Daly, is trying to do this as he's teaching this into some of his leadership. Here's the thing for all of you who are out there, whether you're a student, the parent of a college student, or somewhere in that sphere, do you know what percentage of college students actually fully utilize the services of their career center? It's sad. It really is sad. There are tremendous people working in career centers who are there to help students, and so many students never set foot in there or might set foot in there once and never do it again. They have great resources and great people. We just don't require students to take advantage of these resources. So I will get off of my soapbox on that, and we'll move on to other comments on Kennedy's questions. Gorick or Summer, anything else that you want to share?
Happy to chime in on the leadership front. Well, first of all, let's chat, Kennedy. One of the things that I've seen organizations do is do that onboarding crash course with their early career hires on these unspoken rules and all of the things that your manager may or may not actually end up telling you. And then to do a parallel session with your frontline managers to help them appreciate all of the unknown unknowns that their early career hires may be facing. Because what I see often are diverging trajectories from as early as the first day or first week, where professional A ends up showing up with confidence, meeting people, setting up coffee chats, asking clarifying questions, going to happy hours, meeting people, following up, speaking up, managing up, and then ultimately getting promoted up the organization as well. And then professional B, maybe sitting around, waiting to be told what to do, having that imposter syndrome, maybe staying off camera where everybody else may be more, it seems like more engaged. And these are perhaps behaviors that may have come naturally as a result of Zoom University and whatever their experience looked like in an educational institution, that perhaps these managers don't necessarily have the sympathy or empathy for because they're a little bit more removed from the experience. So when it comes to delegating work, for example, I have a framework where I tell early career hires, make sure that when you're asked to do something, to clarify the how, the why, the what, the how, and the by when. So why is this being asked of me? What's the broader objective? What do you want as the deliverable? How do you want to do it? Do you want me to follow a template? Do you want me to start from scratch? Do you want me to write out some bullet points? And then finally, by when? And every deadline in the workplace has the official deadline and then all of the interim deadlines that you have to work backwards from. I tell that to the early career hires, but it's just as important to equip your managers with that mindset because they're the ones delegating the work. So it's up to them just as much to keep in mind, okay, have I clarified the why, the what, the how, and the by when? Because if you don't, you'll end up having your direct report not do the right work, not do it in the right way, and or not do it on time. And it will be that shared responsibility. But people don't necessarily recognize that. So you have your managers thinking, oh, this generation. And then your new hires thinking, gee, is this manager really looking out for me? Because this seems a lot harder than I was hoping for.
Yeah, wonderful,
It doesn't have to be that way.
comments. Good stuff. Bridget, what do you have for us next? All right, a question from Letitia. How do we get past fit and lean into alignment of values? I have some thoughts, but I would love to hear from you all first. Ange, you want to get us started?
As a very values aligned person through the work that I do with Professionally Unprofessional and just generally in my life, this question is something I reflect on often. And I think a lot of times we often do make compromises around maybe an opportunity that seems very attractive or could be career rewarding and alignment of values. And I see this a lot with Gen Z in particular. These are conversations that I'm having with seniors right now as they're on the job market. We talk about, Ange, I have an offer, I have this opportunity in front of me, but I'm not 100% sure it's exactly the right fit or the right opportunity for my values and the things that I really care about. And then we have to balance and sort of pros and cons list of, should I take this opportunity? Do I risk letting it go? should I keep looking for something that's more aligned? Do I just take a job and have a job in this market, in this job market condition? It's a very hard thing to navigate. I see it all the time, and I've done it myself. I always try to lean into that alignment of values personally when I am thinking about things for my career that I want to be engaging in. I try to say no to those things that aren't going to serve my purpose or the things that are super important to me. And I know that's not always an option that we have. And so remember to give yourself grace and be kind to yourself in those moments where you might have to make a decision that isn't 100% perfect for you, and then opening the door and opening up to opportunity that can give you that full 100% and pour back into what your goals and values are. It is a hard thing, is a very hard thing to navigate.
You know, I have two daughters that are in their 20s as well, and whether it's related to work or other things like this, we sort of jokingly say to each other, "Adulting's hard." Because we do have to start making trade-offs, and life really is about navigating the trade-offs that you have to make. And you're going to look at that and say, what's going to be more important? When I'm coaching students, I'm often saying, first and foremost, what are you looking for out of work and out of a job? We build this notion that folks are all supposed to want to climb the ladder and excel and grow and do all of those different sorts of things. And frankly, it's not what everybody wants. And when we build this notion that that's what everyone should want, it makes folks who are looking at something different. So first, you decide what it is that you're looking for out of work, and then look for employers that will align with you. And again, I'll give credit to Generation Z. This is one of the first generations I've seen that really proactively is looking to see where work fits them and what trade-offs they have to make, as opposed to saying where they fit into a workplace and what trade-offs that they have to make. And that's a big distinction.
I'll just add one more.
Matt, I have sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Summer, go ahead.
I think about last year, I had the opportunity to analyze employer ecosystem at the university I was working at. And across colleges, 16 to 18 colleges, the students were looking for that purpose, that values, to the organization to align with their values. So I think it's important for students and Generation Z, as they're going into the professional world, to interview the organizations as much as they're interviewing them. But also, I think it's important for organizations to build that into their culture. They have to be responsible and accountable for building that in, knowing that that's how they're going to attract these students. They have 20 to 30,000 opportunities on any given day looking at internships and jobs. So being receptive to that and responding to that. And Matt, you said something about Gen Z really, kind of changing the game in terms of how it aligns with their values. I feel like I've spoken with so many leaders recently that they kind of say, I just want to go back to being an individual contributor. Managing people can be difficult. How do I just do really great work? And I think that Gen Z brought that to our attention. Hey, we want to do great work, and we, there's a different way to think about this. And the great thing is every generation has the opportunity to reset that for that. And I didn't say that. Emily Post said that a very long time ago, but it still fits today.
The credit where credit is due. And did you want to wrap on that?
I just wanted to add a concept that I didn't mention in the first pass that I think a lot of folks can grasp onto and can make this fit alignment of values question a bit easier to answer, is listing out and thinking of those non-negotiables. I think we're all pretty confident in ourselves and what we look for. We kind of know what we want to say no to right away or what's not going to serve us. So start there. Start with those non-negotiables, those things that you have to have, those things that you absolutely do not want. I think that can sometimes make it a little bit more approachable.
Great ad. Now, I'm super excited about the next question because I saw it coming up, and I actually asked Bridget to make sure we pull this question up because I think it's really important. Myra is asking, what are some effective communication strategies for someone that is more quiet and shy? This is so important because the world of work can be a lot more challenging for the person who's not a natural extrovert. Ange, I just saw your head starting to nod, and I see yours there too, Summer. Ange, let me start with you, and then Summer, I'll come to you.
Sure. So I do share a lot online. I write a lot, but if you meet me in person, I'm not always the most talkative one in the room. And sometimes that can surprise people. I am generally a bit more quiet and I like that peace. So, Myra, something that I would do is first and foremost, approach your manager, whoever's working closest to you, and kind of let them know about your working style. I started this in my office where I had a document and it said working with Ange. And on that described some things just about me that I thought would benefit my colleagues, especially when we're talking about collaboration and working together. I talked about how sometimes I need a minute to digest something before I'm going to jump in right away. That's not me ignoring you. That's just me processing and taking time to think about how I need to respond. It talked about how if you see me leave at lunchtime, it's my walk for an hour to take a break, come back, and recenter. That kind of transparency around work style, if it can't be with your whole team, at least with your manager, can be really powerful. Because if they understand that your communication is maybe a bit less, or that it sometimes takes you a moment to work up the nerve or the courage to have that conversation, that can break down any sort of gaps, any kind of bias that might form, any kind of misunderstandings that could erupt, and we just haven't talked about it. So I would approach your manager or someone you're working closely with to figure out, hey, here's how I kind of operate. I'm still learning. This is something I'm still growing in. This is my communication style. Please bear with me. I hope we can have that shared understanding. And also, it's okay to be quiet. It is okay to not be as open or talkative. I think it's a learned skill, a skill that can develop over time and something that you can work on if you truly desire it. But it's totally okay to be that quieter person on your team.
Summer, you had some thoughts you wanted to share as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, working with Ray Engel, the president of the Etiquette Institute, one of the things that he shares, and I really love this as we're training, whether they're future etiquette trainers or just students on college campuses, we talk about the general, just basic communication, the sender and the receiver. And it's it is a responsibility of the sender to make sure that their message is clear to the receiver. So, one example is if I'm talking to my grandma, I probably won't text her. She prefers communication via the phone. One of my last bosses, we all use Teams. They didn't, and that's okay. I knew if I wanted to communicate with them, I needed to understand their preference for communication. So I think that's helpful, whether you're an extrovert or introvert, is just realizing that not everybody has your communication style. Not everybody prefers your modes of communication. And so once we understand, am I the sender or am I the receiver? Then we can take responsibility or accountability for how we're connecting with others.
It can be really, really challenging for the more introverted person, particularly if they're looking to move into a role that is going to require some sort of leadership or work in an area where you periodically have to do presentations. So that's a decision. Do you want to work in those areas? If you decide you want to work in those areas, there are ways to develop those skills. There's Toastmasters groups that are out there. If public speaking skills are just what it is that you need to develop, it's seeking out those small opportunities to maybe do a presentation to your team or on behalf of your team. Small little bits to help develop your confidence so that you get better at it. And then once you know you've developed the courage or the confidence, that humble confidence to speak up at the right time, that can really be your superpower. I'll talk about anything. Everyone on the panel knows this already. But you've been in meetings where there are people who will always talk, and then there's those one or two people who really don't say much. They're sitting back, they're listening. But when they do speak, everyone is quiet because they want to listen, because they know Gorick's going to say something. He doesn't speak all that much. He reserves back. We're going to pay attention because it's going to be worth listening to. Now, I know it's not your style, but I'm just using you, Gorick, as an example. Embrace some of that as your superpower, but develop those skills that you need to develop. Gosh, this is fun. Bridget, what do you have for us next? Okay, a question from our friend Jim. My impression is that companies today are, intentionally or not, focusing on employee populations in the 25 to 49 range. Very little gray hair seen in leadership team photos. Are we perhaps too focused on youth and not enough on age and experience? And gang, I will share with you, whenever we do an Ask a Career Strategist session or other workshops that we do, this issue of ageism in the workplace and where do when we're talking about all generations, how do we mean all generations up on that end? We're going to dive into this, but I'm going to ask Mark. We did a workshop about 6 months ago called Success and Satisfaction in the Later Stages of Your Careers. We will drop that in the chat because we really dig deep into this. But to my panelists, let's take on this conversation about where our company's focused, and are we focused on youth versus experience? How do you engage in that conversation? What advice would you have for Jim? Summer, you're nodding. Okay, Gorick, you're going to come down, and then I'll come to you after that.
Sounds good. Summer's going to have a better comment than I, so I'm going to go first so she doesn't steal my thunder here. Just kidding. Jim, you asked this yes or no question. Are we too focused? And I think yes. We talked earlier about the biases that perhaps older generations have towards the younger generation. There are unfortunately biases towards the older generation as well, of being too expensive, of not being adaptable, of having old habits from other organizations that we may or may not want because we want to cultivate our own culture and build people up from a blank slate. And so the strategy that we shared around disarming people as Gen Z, I think is just as, if not even more relevant for someone who's a little bit more experienced. I recognize from my work history that you may even have questions or doubts about my level of commitment to this role, or whether I'm set up to succeed in this role, given that I've had this, this, and this, or the lack of this, this, and this. What I will say is one of the things that's not on my resume that I thought that would be relevant for this conversation is A, B, and C. So perhaps acknowledging it up front, embracing the fact that this is unfortunately a thing that exists in the world, but that you're different, can be disarming and may start a conversation that would otherwise not happen.
Wonderful. Summer.
I agree, Gorick. I think those are, great advice. I think acknowledging it head on, having those conversations, but also upskilling as much as you can in technology skills and things like that. So that way, when you're acknowledging some of those, perceptions, but you're able to talk about the skills that you've learned or the skills that you continue to build upon, and share, opportunities where you have mentored others. And, I think that, I'm a little older than 25, 26, just kidding. But, there are those misconceptions. And I think, again, as like what Gorick said, and then give those specific examples about mentoring, and make sure to upskill as much as you can, so that we're all staying advanced in those skills, which, shelf life of maybe 2 to 5 years. So if you can show that you're staying on trend and on track with that, I think that, every generation has so much to contribute to the workforce.
You really do. This is going to be our last question, folks. And since this question hits me squarely, I'll finish this out on it, because Jim, in July, I'm 60. Okay. So at Indeed, the median age is around half that. So I like to say it takes 2 Indeedians to make one of me. And I dare them to keep up. But some of it is, well, I'm going to back up a second. I will never, ever deny that there is ageism in the workplace, and it's worse in some industries than it is in others. If you perhaps get into advertising or tech or some areas where there's a perceived premium on youth or new ideas, it can be a greater uphill battle. Whereas in other areas, maybe in education or in government, and in some areas, there may be a bias, or in research, there may be a bias to an older worker or a more experienced worker. The only thing that we as an individual can control is what's important to us and what we share with potential employers. So if we're going into a conversation feeling that ageism is an issue for us, we're going to convey that it's an issue to them. If you want to get into a highly energetic environment, you want to come after it and be very, very highly energetic, and look to see if that's a world that you see you will fit into. This isn't easy, and those things do exist out there. But if you can focus on finding worlds where you think you will thrive and giving them the reasons for why you think you will thrive there. That to me is the key to finding your place, or probably in this case, your next place, wherever it is that you might be in your career. Friends, this has been amazingly fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you too. And I hope it has been fun for everyone who has joined us. So I want to thank you today for your time, for sharing your personal experiences, your advice, your expertise. On behalf of everyone joining us here today, we appreciate everything that you do here and through your other activities. If we have the chance, as I'm going through wrap up, let's share the respective contact information and links we have for Summer, Ange, and Gorick. And I will wrap us up right now. To you, our attendees, if you want to dig deeper into any of these topics, please review the links provided in that downloadable handout that we shared at the start and that we're sharing again right now. As we mentioned at the top, this recording will be available immediately after we sign off on LinkedIn, and it'll be on the Indeed Job Search Academy website's workshops page in the coming week to 10 days. Lastly, we want to know how we did today. So do us a solid, would you? Please let us know what you thought about today's program by completing our brief survey. There's a QR code that's on the screen right now. We're also dropping a link into the LinkedIn and YouTube comments. It's pretty brief, but listen, we read all of these reviews and we take them to heart because we want every single one of these programs to be better than the last one in terms of content and relevancy for you who are joining us. Now, before we go, I also want to highlight a few of our upcoming webinars. On April 23rd, you'll have me again. I'll be facilitating our latest Indeed Bootcamp. I will be joined by a member of our product marketing team who focuses on our company pages. Her name is Sam Rosenberg, and she's going to share some information on our reviews, our work well-being information, how you can use that as a great tool to find a workplace that fits you. We'll also dig into the Indeed platform and share some, tips and hacks on tools and resources to help you use Indeed to find better work. Then on May 1st, Bridget will come out from behind the curtain and lead a special Ask a Career Strategist session with a longtime friend and guest, Kenneth Johnson. This is going to focus on networking, the power of networking. Be an hour-long program. They will take your questions, focusing on networking. It's going to be great. It's a session that we're doing in partnership with one of our Job Search Academy partners, HBCU Spring Coming, as a kickoff to their series of HBCU Spring Coming events. All right, now to stay aware of all of our programming, all of our future live webinars, you can follow us on LinkedIn. It's always a wonderful thing to do. You can follow the Indeed YouTube channel, and you can sign up for Job Search Academy mailings. Come on our mailing list. You just click on the Get Updates button on our homepage, on the Job Search Academy homepage, or just scan the QR code and it'll take you directly to that form. We just ask for your name and your email address, and you will get one email a month from me. You can always unsubscribe to at any time. Friends, that's our program. Thank you for joining us here today. We hope to see you again on future Indeed Job Search Academy webinars. Have a great day.